Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 100 of 2-Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip comes to us from special guest, Pat Roque.
I created a feedback form that I use at every event that I do. It fits on one 8.5/11 single front side sheet of paper, where at the top you're asking for the score of, speaker quality, content delivery, etc. 0 is terrible, 5 is awesome. And I always challenge the audience saying, I'm going to ask you to judge me harshly. My goal is to get 25 points out of you, and I need to earn every single one of those. So please pay attention and know that I'm going to look for you to judge me on these things. The second section is 3 small questions, open-ended. What was your big aha takeaway? What one thing would you like to know more about? And then any comments or feedback. So you know if you're on track, you know which pieces to dial up in front of that audience, what you could do better if you need to do something better. And the bottom part is, thank you. If you want more information, join my free Facebook group, and they can check that off. Access your free career clarity, soul searching assessment. So there's something they can get for free. Or if they'd like to schedule a free virtual coffee to chat about their goals, or hire me as a speaker. So there's 4 checkbox, all free, and they can put their email and their information, again, only if they choose. And for anybody that submits the form, we do a raffle for some high value, something, a copy of my book, a free workshop for their team, something. So I'm getting very candid testimonial feedback. We always know if we're spot on. You'll always know if your message is resonating, and you'll have concrete follow-up with the people in the seats who actually want it. You know how to follow up. They've specifically requested it. And now you've given them tools, ideas, and accountability in a way to follow up so that they can take your message and act upon it, and you can really change their world.
Stick around, and after the break, we'll hear more from Pat Roque. Welcome back. Before I talk about today's guest, I want to take a moment and acknowledge a milestone. This is episode 100 of the podcast. It's a big number, and it took a long time to get here. It still kind of amazes me that we're here now talking about 100 episodes, and yet I feel like I've only scratched the surface of what we can talk about when it comes to public speaking and helping you to become a more effective speaker. But it's been a lot of fun, and I thank you all for coming along on this journey, and I thank all of my guests who have been on to share their time and their expertise as well. I hope that you continue to find value in this show for another 100 episodes and beyond. If you have found that the show has helped you in some way become more effective, I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and email me at bill@2minutetalktips.com. or post a comment over at 2minutetalktips.com/rockon. Now, back to our guest and the things that she can teach us. Quite simply, Pat Roque rocks. In fact, that idea is what her whole philosophy and work to empower folks focuses on. In this episode, she talks about how she uses a box of rocks to build custom talks and extend that talk months and years after she leaves the stage. Managing your life and growth can be a complex undertaking, so Pat actually breaks it down into 5 different areas: family, fun, fitness, finances, and her fabulous career. That certainly makes tackling personal growth look a little bit easier. But what I really like here is the alliteration with the letter F. That is a classic public speaking tool, and using that kind of alliteration to land a point and help make a structure more memorable is actually a really great tool to have in your speaker toolbox. I also like how Pat talks about breaking things down into 90-day plans. 90 days is sort of really a nice measure that you can pair with a corporate structure or with your own personal planning that gives you time to sort of really dive into something, to think of it as a quarterly project, but at the same time is short enough that you're going to have to look at the results at some point. And that point is probably going to be in 90 days. So it works out that way. We talk about all that and more this week on 2-Minute Talk Tips. Although she founded her company in 1988, and actually that was on February 11th, 1988, so Pat even just celebrated the birthday of her company. So although she founded it in 1988, a midlife meltdown sparked her own pivot, and her mess became her message. Pat and her box of 50 rocks have transformed lives and careers through her proprietary Rock On Success coaching system and mastermind. It sparked global keynote talks, coaching, and now she's authored 2 books as an expert in helping folks figure out why they rock and how they can tell their story to serve the world in an even bigger way. Whether she helps one-on-one, in group coaching, or from the stage, Pat's clients gain confidence, leadership effectiveness, career fulfillment, and a rock-solid future. Pat is a fierce advocate for strength-based culture, virtual teams, women's leadership, diversity, and inclusion. A passion is driving business through golf. Pat serves as a global brand ambassador for the LPGA #InviteHer initiative and as a board member of several golf and health charities. Pat juggles life in the sandwich generation, quarterbacking work, marriage, aging parents, 2 college students, and a rescue puppy named Bella. She lives a laptop lifestyle, working remotely from New Jersey and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So now, let's meet Pat Roque and her rocks. So Pat, thank you so much for joining me on 2-Minute Talk Tips this week.
It's my pleasure. It's so nice to meet you and to help your audience.
You've been speaking for a while and doing a lot of great work with helping people change their lives. But what is your first memory of speaking or performing in front of a group?
My mother's first memory of my speaking and performing was in very early elementary school. I was always the one that jumped on the stage, and she said she walked in, she was the PTA president, and I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I became the president of the Junior Civics Club. And I was up on a stage running a meeting with 8th graders, etc.
Wow.
And she realized at that moment that that would be part of my journey probably forever because I was a natural at it. I don't even remember that day personally, but she'll tell you it was pretty good. So,
Awesome. And 8th graders may just be the toughest crowd in existence.
True. In Catholic school, 8th graders, yes, an angry bunch.
I spent those 8 formative years in Catholic school as well.
So you understand my journey.
Oh yes. You were good at it from an early age, but have you always enjoyed it?
Always. I appreciate the art of storytelling. It's something that's come natural to me, and I do not profess to be perfect ever. In fact, the imperfection is part of the story, but I love the sharing of knowledge. I enjoy listening to others and learning from them, and have learned that it's our duty and obligation to share our message with the world. And so when you frame that differently on how you can help and serve other people, it makes it all worthwhile, and it makes it important, and it makes it something that deserves time out of your schedule and the proper preparation and making sure that you give value all along the way.
Yeah, very true. I think one of the best things that I think has happened to public speaking over the last 5 to 8 years has been the growth of awareness around the power of telling stories and of connecting your audience with well-prepared stories.
Absolutely. And I believe that TED Talks have escalated that. That's on my bucket list for 2019. I'm throwing it out there. But absolutely empowering people to realize we all have a story to tell, and that the art of storytelling or public speaking can change your life, and you can be better at it, whether you speak one-on-one across a dinner table, or you lead a team of 4 or 5, or a virtual team, or you're looking to deliver an impactful message for a conference or a stadium filled with 1 or 10 or 100,000 people. There's a way to take your core message and apply it in all of those different situations. But it all starts with getting clear on your message and your gift.
Right. And getting clear and on your message and your gift, that becomes so important into the process of preparing a talk. It seems like that's really where everything has to begin. So when you're developing a new talk, what does your process look like?
My process has evolved over time. And since my 50th birthday, I had a lovely meltdown. Just to share some transparency, my mess has become my message. I was 50, making buckets of money, and had one of those dreadful phone calls in the ShopRite parking lot that we lost our funding and it all went away in a 5 to 10 minute phone call. And I was 50 and in the middle of menopause and a primary breadwinner with 2 kids in college. So I went from hero to zero in one phone call and cried for about a year and a half. And when I was reinventing myself on my 50th birthday, my best friend dug in the snow, gave me a box of rocks, painted them gold with 50 things that are special about me in a box that says 50 rocks, and so do you. So I literally have the greatest prop on the planet. It's unique. And it's my reminder that we all have gifts. We're all special. And so my preparation for serving your audience, whoever you may be, is understanding that I am a conduit to you accomplishing your goals. And so I literally bring the box of rocks, but I have an enormous assortment of opportunity to tell stories around each of the rocks. So I go in and understand what your audience is, where they're at, their pain, their promise, what will change them, impact them, or make their world better. And then I go back and meditate and pray over it. And I come back with suggestion for, perhaps, depending on the time length of the talk and the venue of the talk, but talking about helping you shine in your best light, understand why you rock. And then I use my rocks as storytelling tools. So I'm delivering your message and reinforcing your needs. They think they're listening to a story about me, but it's all been completely pre-planned in reinforcing messaging to support the organization who's brought me in.
Oh, that's really interesting. First of all, that's got to be a really fun piece of luggage to travel through airports with.
Oh, yes. And the box is starting to wear and the rocks are starting to wear. And I literally have to go back with a Sharpie and color them in and re-spray them. And it's amazing. And we did a photo shoot. So I have captured this box 1,000,000 times over so that I have it forever digitally, because it's my most prized possession and it's very heavy. So yes, it's a trip carrying it through airports, and I do physically travel with it most of the time.
Wow. What I think is also really interesting about that and your perspective on that is that a lot of folks who may be doing a lot of talks at their organization or wherever, they may have their sort of go-to stories. Maybe they have, their different slide decks. I know back in the day, I used to work for a company where we were talking about a lot of different things. So I would have a 300 slide deck that I would just pull slides from to build a talk around. But that's sort of an abstraction of what you're doing. The rocks are an abstraction as well, but it's also a physical representation of the different topics that you can talk about. And you could actually build a talk by pulling out this rock and this rock and this rock. And really, it's a nice concrete visualization of the potential outline of a talk.
Absolutely. And to dial that up a notch, I will typically have rocks if we're in a table setting with rounds, etc. The attendees will have rocks hidden under their chair and Sharpie pens, or they'll be part of the decor. They won't necessarily know that they're there or realize that they're there until we start to talk, because during my talks, I always have people interact and to identify what would your best friend, colleague, or your mom say is your best attribute. Why do you rock? And we go through the audience. I typically speak with a wireless lavalier. I'm untethered. And I'm in and around and working the room. I almost never have a PowerPoint unless someone absolutely begs me to have one. And if I do, it's the bare minimum possible, because it's really about you, the people in the seats, and getting you to stop and to pause and to think about why you rock. So you're going to end up leaving our workshop with perhaps a copy of my book, The Rock on Success 90-Day Fast Action Planner, and or a physical rock, often painted in your branding color. Or I do them pink and white and silver for Breast Cancer Awareness Month, or orange and whatever around Halloween, whatever. But people have a collection of my rocks. If they've seen me speak many times, they keep a collection of my rocks at their desk, in their car, on their dashboard, in their room, wherever. And it's a daily reminder of why you rock. So, yeah, they're very much physical, mental, emotional stimulus to remember why you rock.
That's awesome. And also, with as expensive as everything can get when you're planning an event or a big meeting or a convention or any of this stuff from an organizational standpoint, this is probably one of the least expensive, most powerful props or giveaways for attendees at an event. That's also pretty powerful.
Absolutely. And they can be painted in your branding colors. I've done this talk globally. I've even done train the trainer programs for corporations, pharmaceutical companies, etc. So we've had teams in Hyderabad in India, for example, that are doing a Rock Your Strength program. So all of my programs and my training and my courses that extend beyond the talks have the rock theme. So Rock Your Strength is one of my corporate training programs. For example, we did Train the Trainer virtually via Zoom. And then when the U.S. team flew out to Hyderabad to India, the team in India purchased the rocks. They painted them the branding colors. They had the Sharpies, like the tools are all there. So we can facilitate this dialogue. And then they have a 90-day success system. They do check-ins. They have a mastermind. So there's continuity with the messaging as well. And we can accommodate literally doing this anywhere on the planet and making it work one way or another.
And that's awesome to have the whole follow-up program that goes on after the talk, because so many talks and training presentations happen and then they end and then that's it, without that follow-up, without that check-in, without that process to reinforce the learning. Exactly.
So my relationship with my clients runs full circle. And they know that they have the ability, the tools, the idea, and the topics to be able to create a continuity program that can be updated every month, every quarter. So I love 90-day game plans, because when I was having my own meltdown, found that was a manageable chunk of time. It was not overwhelming. Thinking about 10 years from now was beyond my hormonal capability at that moment. So I was able to stop and say, okay, let's just slow down. What about next year? A year from now, what needs to be different in terms of family, fun, fitness, better finances, and my fabulous career? Those were my 5 bucket goals. And then looking at a year, how do I break that out quarterly? How do I look at 90 days at a time and reverse engineer, start with the end in mind? So we do programs. So we have different programs related to the theme and continuity and check-in. And the 90 days is a manageable, palatable way to give people something to work toward, some nice interim benchmarks and milestones. Stepping stones along the way, I call them.
And it's a time frame that most organizations and corporations are used to working in anyway, as they think quarter by quarter, a 90-day time frame.
Right, and you can start it at any time. It doesn't have to be a January launch. We do a lot of January programs, obviously. I do a lot of vision board workshops and things to help people rock their vision and set up a new year for success. But it allows for fluidity and flexibility based on, again, it's always about what the audience, what the client, what you need, not what I have to sell or what I have to say. I will tweak and reflect and tell the story that's going to resonate based on what's happening with you and your audience.
Fantastic. So as you're working with all of these different organizations and corporations, obviously you're not the only one who has the stage at many events. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see, especially the mid-level folks, making at these organizations with their speaking or career?
You're ready for my favorite term? What
Absolutely.
I teach people not to do? Okay. I teach people not to verbal vomit. One of the biggest offenses that seems to be epidemic proportions is folks who speak for the art of hearing themselves or feel that they need to include minutia detail to the point that they lose their audience and they accomplish exactly the opposite of their intention. Have you ever heard someone verbal vomit? Can you imagine someone's face when I say that? We probably all can, right?
Oh yeah.
So helping folks understand their purpose and why they're there and what their goal is. So starting with the end in mind and coming up with a very clear, concise, memorable, and repeatable way to tell that story so that you're not speaking too much. And another visual that helps is about starting with the end in mind. It's like if you were a travel agent, let's just say, sake of argument, where's your favorite place in the world that you travel? You yourself.
I loved going to Tokyo.
You have a moment in Tokyo that lights your fire, like you picture yourself there doing something.
Oh yes, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be sitting in an ice cream shop near a photo library, making notes on the trip so far in a paper notebook and watching people walk on by living their lives. And
are you sipping a coffee or a latte, or is there something about tea in Tokyo or a cocktail, something, right?
Absolutely. A green tea latte.
Okay, so you've got your taste, your touch, your smell. We see things, your visual. So now if I'm the travel agent and I'm trying to get you to that green tea latte, if I start to talk about making the phone call and going online and looking up booking.com, and then maybe I'll try Expedia, and what about this? And let's look at the dates. And then it's going to pop up and it's going to show me pictures of airplanes. And when I pick the picture of the airplane, I have to figure out which airline to choose. And if I do that, then maybe I want to book a hotel, but maybe I don't, blah, 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 right? And so now the 8,000 steps that actually happen between today and that green tea latte are not what you want your talk to be about. If you were a great travel agent trying to help Bill get to his dream remote job location or dream vacation, whichever my purpose is, right, as your travel agent, I need to focus on getting your mind wrapped around the smell, the taste, what it feels like sitting at that table with your paper planner in hand and the foam frothing in that drink and you chuckling because you get to see X, Y, and Z passersby. And when you look out the window at sunset, the view is this, or sunrise, it's the building glistens or the mountain glistens, whatever you need to see to envision your goal, the end, that's where I need to take you in as few words as possible. So we need to talk about the destination much, much more than the journey. The journey part needs to be condensed down so much. And so the best speakers are all about the froth and the smell and the taste of that latte and how you're going to feel there. And the poorest speakers are focused on, going to Expedia and all the thousands of things that need to happen to actually get you there.
Right.
Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. One of the things I've told folks is that often they can say more by speaking less.
True. That's a fabulous line. Can I quote you on that?
You sure can.
Great. Yes, absolutely.
obviously speaking is a core part of your career. It's what you do. How did it come to driving your career? Did you start this phase by, I want to go out and speak to these audiences, or did it start from more of the, I have this message, I can help people with this message. What tools do I need to use to go ahead and share this message?
Wow. Oh, chicken and egg, truly. So my business started, are you ready? February 11th, 1988.
Wow. That's
before many people listening were born. So you have to think about the fact that I'm old school in terms of I was only 24. I'm going to be 55 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was no digital. So digital marketing was not a thing. Marketing
Mm-hmm.
was a thing, but there was no digital in front of it. And so speaking was a natural piece of my core delivery, because we weren't buying Facebook ads. We weren't on social media. We weren't doing Facebook Lives. None of those things existed.
Right.
So I would speak for groups and offer value. And if you think about what a sales funnel is like, if you know what a sales funnel
Mm-hmm.
is, where you're in front of your right audience, your ideal target audience, and you share value, not in a salesy way, and you deliver an educational or an inspirational or a motivational, some kind of an impactful message, depending on who they are and what they need. You give them something free to follow up with so that they can grasp and engage with your message and do something, take an action on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they find that they need help or they were so inspired, they can call you to come in and help them really implement. So I would do workshops, Chamber of Commerce or Rotary, 10 low or no cost ways to market your business to a group of entrepreneurs at 7:30 in the morning for the Wayne Rotary. And then I would give them my $25,000 marketing diagnostic tool, or $2,500 depending, but
Mm-hmm.
my marketing diagnostic, it was a 20 question, very deep tool, and say, here, this is my gift to you. If you can follow this and use this with your team, you will be in so much better shape a year from now. Trust me, this will help. If you get stuck and have questions, call me. And so inevitably someone would say, I loved your talk. This makes sense, but it's way more overwhelming. I don't want to do this on my own. We want to hire you. And that's how I made my first $5,000 a month retainer. And it went from there. And that's how I grew my business. So the talk came from, again, a much more limited roster of tools available to us back in the day. People were doing direct mail. Remember that? And fax blasting. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It ended up, some of the original anti-spam legislation was anti-fax legislation.
Exactly. So that's where it started the first round. And now fast forward to when I turned 50 and I rebranded myself with this box of rocks and created the Rock On Success System. I started blogging on LinkedIn one rock at a time just to make myself feel better and to think out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I started getting calls and messages from people. Can you coach me? Can you help me? Can you help my team? So the speaking and the coaching and the whole thing evolved organically through social media, especially through LinkedIn. So my answer is two-part. If I go back into the 80s and 90s, it was a cornerstone piece of how I did business. It's still today, I am still, I guess what you'd say, old school in some respects. I still love speaking in front of a live crowd. But Zoom helps us do that too, and podcasts. I mean, there's so many ways to reach people in how they prefer to learn. So at the end of the day, you want to know your audience and know their preference and meet them where they're at.
It's one of those things where the speaking gave you a lot of those core skills back in the day from doing the work, from spending the time, from getting the stage time. And then when you're able to turn it into, a series of LinkedIn posts as you're rebranding yourself, and then other folks are able to bring you in, it's because you did all of that speaking earlier on in your career that you had that tool, that you had that tool set that you can then bring to this new message and this new approach and this new way of succeeding, because you refined those tools and refined that practice earlier on.
That is true. And that is why, if I can read your mind, because one of the biggest questions that pops up for folks who are evolving, and I'm now a top recommended coach through LinkedIn. And so a lot of folks come to me asking for help with their public speaking. And often it's because they're facing a career transformation, a career pivot, and they've not had to look for a job or think about their future. They've been at Verizon, let's just say, for 25 years, or one of the pharmaceutical companies for 30 years. They've been in a company they respect and they admire and they love, evolved in their job, but they've not had to stretch those muscles. They've not had to put themselves out there. They've not had to market themselves. So teaching them now how to present themselves as a, what I call personal brand, and tell their story, whether it's how they introduce themselves, whether it's their LinkedIn summary, whether it's their interviewing, whether it's them going out and starting to get speaking gigs, whether it's the local, one of my clients just got a huge promotion at a different company, doubled, 10,000 shy of doubling her base salary.
Wow.
Doubling her base salary plus. And she was then going out and speaking at a women in industry tribute type of event. She'd not done that before, but she knew she needed to get out there as an expert on diversity and inclusion. Was her, her corner, her niche. Mm-hmm. And so focusing on how to deliver an impactful speech where that hadn't been something she needed to do. And she actually landed a new job at a huge, awesome company with nearly double her base. And they basically gave her carte blanche. They created her job for her. It didn't even exist.
That is fantastic.
Yep. So it's important to learn how to rock your public speaking and to understand how to tell your story and deliver an impactful message, whether it's, again, one-on-one across a table in front of 5 or 10 or 20, or in an interview, or in front of hundreds or even thousands or tens of thousands of people.
That's awesome. And I love how through so many different aspects of the conversation, you're able to weave in the rock your or rock on with this, and that whole theme from your brand really coming through, and just naturally how you're able to talk about things. It's a nice consistency that a lot of folks don't think about in what they're talking about and developing their brand.
Thank you. And it's so funny because we all need perspective. And if you know anyone that's been in a wedding or a prom, I do a lot with women in leadership who are looking to get board of director seats, or they're looking for C-suite promotions. My program is Rock Your Extreme Career Makeover. And we literally teach them how to tell their story. We redo their profiles, their resumes. We do a VIP photo shoot. I take them and kidnap them for 3 days at the beach. And we have a body, mind, and spirit. We do a complete makeover for them for their career. And so when I'm helping them, because when you're trying on your prom dress or your wedding dress, now I'm a lady who did that. I'll speak for myself. You can't see how your butt looks in the dress unless you're taking it away. You need perspective from others. True? We all need perspective. It's really hard to help ourselves with some of this stuff. So I have always been obsessed with rocks. My father's name was Rocky. My father-in-law's name is Rocky. My son's middle name is Rocky. I'm Italian and obsessed with rocks and marble and all of that. I've always talked about rock solid success and a rock solid foundation and rocking this. Like, it's been my language always. And after the meltdown and the box of rocks was bestowed upon me, I was at a workshop called Speak to Sell, working on polishing my storytelling, actually. And I had a meltdown and started to cry in the middle of 500 people. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. And that night we were supposed to be practicing our introductions, and I was crying again. And these lovely women from around the world got together with me, and they were very supportive, and they helped me think out loud. And they're the ones that called me the Rockstar Transformation Coach. And Rock On Success was born that night over cocktails. And I stopped crying tears of frustration and started crying tears of joy. And that was my quantum leap moment, because the brand, all the elements were there, but you need perspective from others to really figure out sometimes how to tie it together and share it in a way that makes sense. So if you can feel that this is a very natural conversation for me, it is truly, but that's because I've done the homework to hone it and to really do what I also call the soul searching. One of the tools I created is a soul searching career assessment. And when I help people figure out their career pivot, what does that next chapter look like? Because you need to understand what matters to you, what's important to you, what are your likes and dislikes, how do you like to spend your time, how much free time do you want and need, what about your family, what are the things people thank you for, what are you good at naturally? All of that comes into play so that when you're storytelling, you're authentic and sharing from the heart, and it needs to flow out of you because you don't need to be an extrovert to be good at this. And I know, Bill, you know that as well as anybody. Even an introvert can be a great storyteller when they get clear on their gifts and get clear on the fact that other people need to hear their story, that they can impact others, and that it's our duty and obligation to do so. And when we get that clear and we give them the words, they now are confident. And from confidence comes that flow and the smile in your voice. And you stop worrying about being perfect. You worry about being just yourself. And if you give yourself permission to just be you, and you're in the room with the right people, that's the magic. That's all that needs to happen. The rest takes care of itself. So I always give tips, but they're not often so much about put your hand here, keep your chin at this level. There's all those, the pregnant pauses and things. I do that. And there's people that are great at doing that. I just saw Michael and Amy Port did a workshop at an Archangel Summit, and they talked about heroic speaking. They were great, but they talked more about the delivery and the cadence and the performance aspect, which are all super important pieces. But in my world, I come at it from thinking about the authentic storytelling. What is the message that God wants you to tell? Is there a voice inside you that knows there's something that's got to be said? What are people waiting to hear? Why do people thank you all the time? What's the thing that you say and do that puts others at ease and they thank you profusely? And you look at them and say, what? That was nothing. That was easy. Because it's natural to you. What are your gifts and your strengths? What comes naturally to you? That should be your message. For me, my mess became the message. And using the rocks and the vernacular, I always spoke that way. So the Rock On Success brand, once someone helped me figure that part out, the rest flows because it's me. I'm not stretching to be who I'm not, to try to sell you something or impress you, but rather to impress upon you that you deserve to shine in your own light and find your authentic voice and just be you.
That is fantastic, and that is powerful. You mentioned twice, you got to take your mess and make it your message. It's interesting because just a few weeks ago on my other podcast, I was talking with a group of women called the Three Stromies, the Three Stroke Homies, some stroke survivors who have gone ahead and created a new blog and social media presence and whole support system for other young stroke survivors. And one of the Stromies said that, and that was sort of the core of her story was you take your mess and you make it your message. You know, sometimes the darkest times in our life, you know, those times like, as you said, where you were, you know, crying after a phone call or breaking down in a conference, those we may feel like we're at the end of something, but really, you know, as in your case, as in the Stromies, as in, you know, with my own experiences there, you know, those quote unquote tragic moments really become some of the powerful ones that are not the end of something, but they're the start of something beautiful and amazing.
Exactly. Those are those quantum leap moments. Literally, the blood ran out of my face. My lips turned white. My hands were shaking. I was supposed to be writing my branding, my 3 key points on a piece of paper in this workshop. And I just froze and my hands shook. And I literally couldn't move. I couldn't write a word. I couldn't move. The woman in the seat next to me physically moved her chair away to physically give me space because she did not know what was happening, but she saw I was having a moment.
Right.
And the next day, so here's the good part of the story, if I can share this, because here's the 0 to hero moment.
Absolutely.
Whenever you go to a conference, you have to promise yourself you will raise your hand and ask a relevant question because you deserve to be announced. My name is, I serve these people. When I help them, they feel this. This is, what I do. My question is, blah, blah. Always announce, because then you get a chance to introduce yourself and be visible in a room. No matter how many people are in the room, always ask a relevant question that can help other people in the room.
And that's a very achievable, concrete goal, too, going into a conference.
It's phenomenal. And you know what the conference is about, so you don't have to sit and struggle. You should have this in your bag of tricks. You should be sitting there thinking about this in advance, because inevitably, in every speaker session, someone will ask, who has a question, or can you give me an example? And you need to raise your hand. And I've built some amazing relationships doing that. But when I went to this conference, I committed that I was going to raise my hand and be at that microphone. And so the first day I totally was not. I was too busy crying in my chair. And then after that evening, and we talked about it, the next day, the speaker was saying, okay, so who wants to practice? Who's got a story to tell? How did your introduction workshop? How'd you do last night at happy hour? How was the cocktail party for you? Did you learn anything? Did you meet a new friend? Do you want to practice your introduction? Go jump to the microphone and tell us your outcome. What'd you learn? What'd you do? Or do your introduction for us. You pick. So I jumped up to the microphone and I introduced myself as the Rockstar Transformation Coach. I help high-achieving professionals and executives and entrepreneurs rock their career and their life without selling their soul or losing their mind. And the whole place stood up and started cheering. So 500 people.
That's fantastic.
And I started to cry again because it felt really good. It felt right. And so it was really cool validation. Now I had a whole room. So people were saying, hey, rock star. The whole rest of the conference, people were coming up to me and high-fiving me and all that crazy stuff. But they were able to find me. They knew who I was. And if my message resonated with them, they were seeking me out for the rest of it. And I've now been friends and talked to a bunch of these people over that was 3 years ago. But it was a pivotal moment. So grabbing that microphone from the seats is a great way to become a speaker and become known and practice. Because if it resonates, great. And if you speak and you feel like it fell on dead ears, you were expecting some kind of a response and instead it was a wah-wah kind of dud moment, well, the next time maybe try something different.
Well, that is fantastic. That is excellent. And if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
They can visit the Rock On Success Academy. All of my courses and programs live there. It's rockonsuccess.com/academy. That's ROCKON success, SUCCESS.com/academy, where you can get information on Extreme Career Makeover, all the programs we talked about, or you can message me at pat@rockonsuccess.com. or join my free Rock On Success Facebook group. So very, very happy to engage, to answer questions. If you join the Facebook group, I introduce you and give you a chance to talk about who you are, why you rock, and start to engage with a bunch of like-minded, go-giver, successful people who love helping each other change the world.
Fantastic. And we'll also have all of those links available at 2minutetalktips.com/rockon. So Pat, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
Bill, you're awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
Pat and I went on chatting after the episode wrapped up. I really enjoyed connecting with her. The lessons she shared with this week about branding, speaking, hard work, and self-empowerment are even more powerful because of the way she wove them into the conversation, demonstrating them even when not explicitly calling them out. A lot of guests have talked about authenticity and speaking your true message. When you do have a message that comes from your heart, all those threads are just that much more natural. You don't have to work as hard to weave them into your life or into your talks or into your conversations. They just naturally find their way there. So head on over to 2minutetalktips.com/rockon to tell us in the comments why you rock. Be sure to check out Pat's site and social media links also over at 2minutetalktips.com/rockon. Prepare your own post-speaking scorecard for your audience to complete so you can get better and stay connected with your audience. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. And join us next week where we'll hear from Sasha Lago.
Unfortunately, I've seen some managements that have grown complacent, and those are very bad horror stories to observe because it just needs a ridiculous degree of shock to get everyone up and running to meet a common goal.
Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
Two Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.